Hi guys, I hope you're all really well. Welcome to part 2 of my horror movie collection. When I started this episode, I didn't think it would go on for as long as it did, and I decided to make it a two-parter. If you haven't seen the first part yet, I will link it somewhere here. Like I said in that episode, I collect both DVDs and Blu Rays because I tend to just buy the edition that is best for me at the time, whether that's through the cost or accessibility. I also buy my movies brand new and second hand because I think it's good to financially support the filmmakers, but buying films used in second hand is better for the environment. So like in part 1, we're just going to work our way through the movies in alphabetical order, and maybe I'll share any little interesting anecdotes or stories or mini reviews about the movies as we go. Okay, so kicking off part 2, we have the Mummy trilogy on Blu Ray. I bought this for my collection because I wanted it on Blu Ray because I love the first Mummy. It is such a comfort watch for me. I think it's a good movie as well. And you'll probably notice in my backdrop, someone very lovely bought me the entire pop vinyl collection of the Mummy for Christmas. So I have Imhotep at the top there, I have the beautiful Evelyn here, and Rick chilling out at the bottom. I think The Mummy Returns is a really solid sequel. It does get a bit more actiony, but I think it's a fun watch. The third one, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, I've only watched once, but they changed Rachel Weisz as Evelyn, and Rachel Weisz is one of my favourite actresses. I adore her, I adore Evelyn, and it just didn't feel the same with the new actress. I think what's she called? Maria Bello. So yeah, I've only seen that one once, sorry. But yeah, the first one, I love it. Next up we have The Mummy, this time the Tom Cruise version. Now this was when Universal were going to do the Dark Universe, where they were going to reboot all of the Universal monsters, and I was so excited for it. And as soon as this came out, I bought it, only on DVD, not Blu Ray. I like Tom Cruise. I think he's very good at what he does, and I obviously, love The Mummy, so I was very excited for a new edition of it. Got it. It's fine. It's enjoyable enough. I would say it's more action than horror, but I keep it with my Universal Monster collection. I can understand why they didn't go ahead with the Dark Universe when this bombed slightly. It's fine. I'm very glad that Lee Winnell took up doing the Universal Monsters though, because we've got an incredible Invisible Man. Next up we have the original My Bloody Valentine. This is one of my favourite horror movies and becomes more of a favourite with every rewatch. I watched it recently for Valentine, and I watch it on Valentine's Day. It's become a new tradition for me. I love this film. I've tried to find it on streaming previously, and unfortunately in the UK we don't have that beautiful Scream Factory release. So this is the best I could do. An 80s collection DVD, but I have it in my collection. I own it. One of my favourite movies. Next up we have My Bloody Valentine 3D, the remake of the original released in 2009. I bought this secondhand because I wanted to have a complete collection of both of them. I like this one. It's not a great movie and it's nowhere near as good as the original, but I think as remakes go, it's fair to middling. And I mean, it has Jensen Ackles in it from Supernatural, and I love Supernatural. Yes, one of the scenes has some gratuitous nudity that doesn't really need to be in there, but it's fine. It's, it is what it is. I enjoy it. Next up we have Night of the Creeps, and this is my beautiful Eureka collection. Let me just show you. Ooh, the other cover. There we go. It's like a dismembered hand or a zombie hand on a doorknob, but I prefer this one. I think this one is beautiful. Love this movie. This is another one that is Tom Atkins, released in 1986. Yes, I would highly recommend. If you haven't seen this one already, I would highly recommend it. It's such a wonderful 80s, I don't know, would it be a creature feature? B-movie? I don't know. It's good anyway. Next up we have my Blu Ray collection of all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. No, I don't have the remake. I don't have any desire to own the remake or watch the remake. Everything that I have heard about it makes me not want to watch it. I do enjoy this franchise. I prefer Nightmare to Halloween and Friday the 13th, so I don't want to watch the remake where they go in that weird direction with Freddy Krueger. But yep, you get all of the movies in it. It's not a spectacular collection, but it does the job. This was a Christmas present. Again, that's why it's Blu Ray and not a secondhand DVD. Next up, we have the American remake of One Missed Call. This is the remake of the Japanese one that was released, I believe, in 2004. Don't quote me on that. I don't know if you saw it in my part 1, but I said that I am a big fan of J-horror and K-horror, and I always watch the original but try to watch the American remake just out of curiosity to see how they did. I watched the Japanese One Missed Call on Shudder. Really enjoyed it. It's not my favourite J-horror, but I did enjoy it. I wanted to watch the American one, couldn't find it on streaming anyway, so I just bought this Blu-ray second hand. It wasn't expensive. It is what it is. It's not as good as the original. It's not a great movie, but I'm still glad I watched it. I don't regret watching it. I think that it's fine as a one-time watch. Next up, we have The Owners. I got this on DVD because I don't think there was a Blu-ray release of it. I'll be honest, the only reason I bought this was because Maisie Williams is in it, and I was in the middle of going through all of the Game of Thrones. So I saw that she was in a horror and I was like, yep, having that. It also has Sylvester McCoy in it, who was a doctor in Doctor Who, and I adore Doctor Who, so I thought it would be interesting to see him in a horror movie as well. I haven't watched it yet. I bought it last Halloween for my 31 days of Halloween. Didn't watch it, still haven't. I'll get round to it. Next up, we have the original Paranormal Activity that came out in 2009. This one was a steal at £1. I don't mind having it on DVD. It's a grainy found footage film. It translates really well to DVD. I love this franchise, and I've only come to realise it in the past year that I absolutely adore this franchise. I think that they are stronger movies than they're given credit for, Ghost Dimension aside. But even then, that's still, if you've seen it and you know what to expect, it's kind of just a fun, cheesy, easy rewatch. But I'm slowly trying to build up my collection. I recently bought Ghost Dimension on Blu-ray brand new for like £1.60 from a company that will remain nameless, and they cancelled my order and said we're going to return it to the depot and refund you. And I was like, no, just send me my movie. But yeah, gradually going to try and build up my collection. I have the first one, and I also have the marked ones, which is the 5th in the franchise. I haven't seen this yet. The reason I bought this one was because it was the only one in the franchise I couldn't find on streaming, so I bought this to watch. But at that point, 4 movies in, I'd kind of had like enough of Paranormal Activity. As much as I love it, I just needed a break from it, so I'm yet to watch this one. But I have 2 out of the 6 films. I have seen the new one, and I have also reviewed that. I will leave a link here. Then we have the remake Pet Sematary. I've not watched this yet. I was having a phase of going through Stephen King movies. I've not seen the original and I've not seen this, but I've heard really negative things about it. So every time I'm browsing my shelves, I just tend to browse past this one. I will eventually watch it, but I'm in no rush. Next up, we have Piranha 3D, another creature feature set around water. This is the remake of the original Piranha, which I believe came out in 1978. I think I have done a review of this movie in the same one where I reviewed the new Paranormal Activity, so again I'll leave a link for that. This movie is it's a movie about boobs that has a few fish in it. It's it's fun. Next up, we have Poltergeist in a beautiful slipcover. Look at those colours. But underneath, we have the original white and blue cover. This one I bought, I believe, for 31 days of Halloween for 2020. Great movie. I mean, people like Tobe Hooper and Steven Spielberg involved. It's bound to be, it's a classic for a reason. Next up, we have a very important movie to me, and that is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. This and Scream often duke it out as my favourite horror movie. I think Scream beats it just by maybe a millimeter, but this is an incredible movie. It's an incredible movie, horror movie. It's a comfort rewatch for me. I think that it's just such a well-made film that really just stands the test of time, despite most of us knowing the twists and surprises in the film. There is still so much to enjoy, even if we know about the shower scene and the ending as well. I think that Norman Bates is one of my favourite antagonists in horror, and I think that he is played sublimely by Anthony Perkins. Yeah, I absolutely love this film. Again, I have it on DVD. I have thought about grading it, but I feel emotionally connected to this because, like with The Birds, I tried to build up my Alfred Hitchcock collection, and I built it up with my DVDs. I would, get the bus into town, I would go to HMV, and I would try and find another Hitchcock movie and build my collection. So even if I did get it on Blu Ray, I would still keep this copy because this was my first copy. This is the one that has been with me for longer than I would like to admit, and I just rewatch all the time. Next up, we have Psycho 2 in this beautiful Arrow edition. I'll show you the other cover. I think this is the original one, and then this is the Arrow edition, which is also stunning, but I do prefer... I can't get it back in now. I do prefer the original cover because you have the silhouette of Norman Bates outside of the Bates house. This movie could potentially be the best horror sequel I've ever seen. I watched it in maybe 2019, maybe 2018. Loved it. And considering this is set 23 years after the original came out, it's still incredible. It really does fit into the Psycho world, and it's such an interesting idea to revisit Norman Bates all these years later, to see a different Norman Bates in a different stage of his life. I think the kills are incredible. Yeah, I would highly recommend this. An incredible sequel, and I had to have it on this Arrow edition. Loads of special content which I've not watched yet, but I look forward to getting around to. This is another franchise where I want to have a full set, so I keep trying to spot Psycho 3 and 4, but it's quite hard in the UK to get those on physical media. I have seen them. I like them both. I think the fourth one is Anthony Perkins' first attempt at directing, and he actually does quite a good job, and it's got the kid from E.T. playing the young Anthony Perkins. So yeah, they're never going to top the first one. The second one is a very strong sequel, but 2 and 3, pretty good. Next up, we have A Quiet Place. This is an incredible movie, and I wish I had watched this when it first came out in 2018. I didn't. I watched it for the first time last year in preparation for watching part 2. I don't know why I waited so long. This is a beautifully shot, beautifully written, and beautifully executed movie. I love it. Next up, we have Ready or Not by Radio Silence, which came out in 2019. This is another one that I asked for my last birthday. That's why it's a brand new Blu Ray, not a secondhand DVD. An incredible movie, another fantastic outing for Radio Silence. Next up, we have the Resident Evil collection. Well, this is the first 4 movies in the franchise. I like the first and the second one probably the most. That's before it gets really bonkers and out there. I do understand that these are not great adaptations of the games, but I haven't played all the games, so I'm not a diehard fan of the games to be disappointed by this adaptation. I am, however, a fan of zombie movies, and I think as a zombie movie, they're pretty good. They do get very cheesy and over the top later on, but I still enjoy them. Next up, I have Resident Evil Retribution, I think this one is. This one is on Blu Ray because it was about the same price on DVD and Blu Ray, so I figure get the Blu Ray. Again, I also have Resident Evil The Final Chapter. This is where the franchise is getting a bit ridiculous and a bit cheesy, but complete collections and all that. Next up, this is a very special one. We have Ring You, my Arrow edition. This cover is stunning. I'll show you the other one. This is the Arrow cover. This one is the original Japanese one. Now, I said in part 1 that I hadn't watched the original Grudge, the Japanese Ju-on, because I had been traumatised by a Japanese movie previously and didn't want the same thing to happen again. This is said trauma. This is the culprit that traumatised me for years. I studied media and movies in sixth form or college, whatever you want to call it. And we went to a lecture about movies, and we all got to watch Ring You on the big screen, and it honestly traumatized me to death. I loved it. It's one of my favourite horror movies, and I do adore it because it gave me the best horror experience that I've ever had. But I'm not kidding when I say it traumatized me. I went home to a house full of unlabelled VHS tapes and was convinced that the Ring tape was in that collection. And the fact that we watched it on the cinema screen, we did have mobile phones at this time, but after we'd seen the film, so many people had missed calls and we all started freaking each other out, convinced that we'd got the call and would die in 7 days. My brother tried to also traumatise me by trying to dress up as Samara and scaring me while we were on holiday once. My dad also drew a picture of Samara and hung it up behind their door in their bedroom. So yeah, my family thought it was hilarious. Parts of my family thought it was hilarious to poke the trauma with a stick. I'm since healed from it. It still creeps me out, still makes me uncomfortable when I watch it, but I love it. I adore it. It's a really good movie. It's my favourite Japanese horror. I do prefer this to the remake only because I think, I saw this first and I had such an experience with it. So when I saw that Arrow had an edition, I had to get it. It's beautiful. And of course we have the American remake, which I have to say, for a remake of J&K horror, which aren't always strong, this is incredibly good. This gives the original a really good run for its money. Love this cover. I only have it on DVD because I think this was the cheaper option at the time. I think the remake is really solid. It's good. It doesn't scare me like the original does. It doesn't unnerve me in the same way, but I do enjoy it. And I also have the Ring 2. So I need rings to complete my American collection, and I need the other 2 Japanese ones, Ring 2 and Ring 0. But yes, this is Ring 2, not a brilliant sequel, but full collections and all that. Next up, we have another one of my favourite horror movies, and that is Saw, the original one. Now, I have this on DVD because I watched this originally back in 2004. And I loved it. I hadn't seen it for a while and I wanted to watch all of the Saw movies for 31 Days of Halloween in 2020. So I bought this one to sort of dip my toe back into it because I knew I liked it, but I just didn't know if I liked it enough to pay for a Blu Ray. So I got it on DVD and I'm so glad I did, because this DVD comes with directors and writers commentary, so you can put it on and you can listen to Leigh Whannell and James Wan talking about the movie, and it's so funny to listen to them retrospectively because of how successful they went on to be, how successful they are. To listen to them talking about the first movie that they put out, not knowing how well it would do. And it also has some incredibly funny moments from Leigh Whannell where he does an impression of a British news reporter. So I did eventually buy all 7 of them on Blu Ray. That is all 7 up to Saw 7, the final chapter. But I kept this purely because of that commentary track, which is really interesting and really funny as well. I don't have Jigsaw. I don't fancy watching it. I don't fancy owning it. I do love the Saw franchise. I think, gore aside, it's one of the most fantastic and convoluted stories in horror, and I love it. And I just think that Jigsaw doesn't look like it fits in with that world, so I don't want it. Next up, we have Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. This is one I bought for me and my son to watch together. I thought it would be a good, more child-friendly one with educating him on horror, but this actually scared him, one particular part of it, so he never finished it. I did. It was fine. I didn't grow up with the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books. I was more Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark? It's fine. It's all right. It feels like it's too mature for kids, but it's too childish for adults. I think this is really for the people who grew up reading the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books. Next up, we have my favourite scary movie of all time, and that is Scream, released in 1996. I love this movie with all my heart and soul. I can't explain. I watched this as a teenager, and there's something about watching a teen horror being a similar age to the characters that really helps you connect emotionally to it, I think. And Sydney Prescott is a final girl that I really connected with and identified with. And I think she's an incredible, inspiring final girl. She's the best one, in my opinion. I also have Scream 2 and Scream 3 and, of course, Scream 4. Now, these three I still only have on DVD because they really remind me of a time where me and my brother would get the bus into town and we'd go to HMV and we'd browse horror movies and we'd pick up a couple of them. We got these and Jeepers Creepers and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Remake and Nightmare on Elm Street and all those kind of films, and we'd come back and my dad would be working late and we would sit and just watch horror movies together. And this is the collection of DVDs of Scream that we got all those years ago, so I'll never get rid of these. Even if I upgraded, I would still keep these. And Scream 4 I got when it was released, and it was such a comfort rewatch for me. I have done a ranking of the entire Scream franchise. I've also done a review of Scream 5, and I have done a ranking of all the ghost faces. So if you love Scream as much as I do, I will leave a link, and don't forget to go check those out. Now, this is a very exciting addition. This is my only 4K in horror. Seeing as how I now have a 4K TV, I am able to buy 4K films, and there was only one option for my first horror 4K, and that is Scream. This absolute beauty. This was on offer. A company did a horror weekend the weekend after Scream was released. So I went to see Scream 5 and I came back and was just browsing Scream merchandise like you do. And I came across this, and I think it was down to like £12 for a 4K. So I had to buy it. I've not watched all of it yet. I have put it on and I have watched some of it, and I freaked out because I was like, Drew Barrymore's got lip liner on. I never noticed that because I've only ever seen them on VHS and DVD. So seeing it in 4K was something else. Seeing Ghostface's costume in that level of detail, I was seeing things I'd never noticed before, and I know this movie inside out. So I can't wait to put it on and watch all of it. I'm so happy that was my first 4K horror movie. Next up we have Shaun of the Dead, starring Simon Pegg, one of my favourite actors, and this movie is made by him and Edgar Wright, who is one of my favourite movie makers. They did a TV series called Spaced together, and they both sort of talked about their love of Resident Evil and of zombies, and thought how funny it would be if they made a zombie movie, which they did, and it is one of the best zombie movies in my opinion. The humour and the horror just complements each other so well, and I love Edgar Wright. The Cornetto trilogy is incredible. Hot Fuzz is my favourite movie that is non-horror. So yeah, I absolutely love Edgar Wright, love Simon Pegg, love zombies. It's a no-brainer. Next up, we have Signs. This is my only M. Night Shyamalan movie. I have this because this was one of my favourites. I had this on VHS, and I did like to rewatch this. There's something quite soothing about how little dialogue is in it. Yeah, it's quite meditative, this movie, in a weird way. I got the hankering to rewatch it, bought it, and didn't rewatch it. Next up is a movie that I love to rewatch every Halloween, and that is Sleepy Hollow, starring Johnny Depp and Christina Ricci, my girl Wednesday Addams. This was released in 1999. I saw it at the cinema. It absolutely terrified me because at the time, when I was a kid, I lived next to a farm, and that night I had to go and lock up my rabbits and guinea pigs in the garden, which is next to a field. It was a dark, misty night, and I could hear a horse galloping across the field towards me, and convinced myself it was the Headless Horseman coming for me. So I've never run so fast in my life, but the gothic aesthetic and monochromatic look of this movie just, oh, it's just the perfect Halloween rewatch. And I have actually already done an episode on this, comparing this to the book, so I will link that here. Now, like I said earlier, I love the Saw films, and while I don't have Jigsaw, I do have Spiral from the Book of Saw. I wasn't able to see this at the cinema when it came out. I think I just maybe didn't feel comfortable going, but as soon as this was on physical media, I bought it. I bought it and I put the whole day aside for like, nope, sofa time watching this movie. It's good. I did enjoy it. I don't think it is as good as the other movies in the Saw franchise, but I definitely think it has its strengths. I think that it is nice to see a combination of wanting to pay respect to the Saw franchise, because there's so many people from the Saw family that were involved in Spiral, but they also wanted to take it into a new direction, a new generation. So I think seeing that merge, it works well enough. Okay, nearly there, guys. I promise this is my last stack. My voice is starting to feel really sore and hoarse. But next up, we have hands down one of my favourite covers in my collection, and that is Tammy and the T-Rex. This is a 101 Films edition. This is Blu Ray. If I can get it out, it comes with the Blu Ray and then a really fun little information booklet as well. And the special features are quite interesting because you've got the interviews with some of the people who are involved, especially Denise Richards, who stars in this. And I love that she has no shame about being in this movie. She owns it. She says every movie she's done has just led her to where she is now. This also stars the late Paul Walker in one of his earliest roles. I saw this on a kill count on Dead Meat, saw the cover and thought, right, I'm not going to watch the kill count. I want to watch that movie myself. And I bought it with some birthday money for my last birthday, I believe. Watched it. It's what you'd expect. It's an animatronic T-Rex that gets a human brain put in it, and it's cheesy, but it's fabulous. Next up, we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. This is another of my Arrow collections, and I love this cover because it's modelled on The Breakfast Club. I'll show you the Arrow cover, which is there, which is equally lovely. There's no disc in this at the moment because it's currently in my Blu Ray player, because I'm working my way through the franchise to rank all the Leatherfaces. This movie is absolutely bizarre, but I love it. I love Stretch. It's so bonkers and so different to the original, and while sometimes I don't like that when that happens, this works for me. I don't know why, just even though it's so different, it just works for me, and it's good fun. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend it. Next up, I have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, released in 2003. This was kindly bought for me by a friend for my last birthday. You'll notice I don't have the original in my collection. That will be changing. I recently rewatched it and just was bowled away by how incredible it is. It jumped into my top 10 horror movies, and I want a physical copy of it. But I have the remake because this is the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie that I ever watched. This is one that me and my brother got and watched. I loved it. I loved how grimy it was. So I just fancied having it in my collection again. It was another one of those that I got rid of when I was streamlining my collection. So I re-got it. Next up, we have Trick or Treat, an incredible horror anthology which is perfect to watch around Halloween. I have done an episode on this movie, that's why I own it. I did a deep dive into it and talked about the legends and stories that inspired the movie. So this is great. I love little Sam, little Pumpkinhead Sam. He's great. It's such a fun Halloween watch. It's just got such a wonderful Halloween feel to it. Next up, we have Valentine. I have done a review of this, so I will link that somewhere here. You guys are going to be busy watching my back catalogue, but I got it at the same time as the My Bloody Valentine movies. I used to own this, but I got rid of it when I was streamlining, so I wanted it back in my collection. It's the only one I have that's the cardboard cover that has this clip and then the chapter list on the inside, but kind of love it. I love the little click that it makes. Very satisfying. Next we have The Village, which is another M. Night Shyamalan movie. I thought Signs was my only one, but I was wrong. I also have The Village. I got this for 31 Days of Halloween for 2021. This gets a lot of stick. I actually quite enjoy this movie. I think that it's visually beautiful and I think that it's quite moving. It's not the best movie ever made, but I enjoyed it. I think it's a perfect autumnal watch when it's raining outside and you've got a candle lit. Next we have The Witch or The Vitch. I haven't seen this yet. I know. I bought it for this Halloween gone. Never got around to watching it. I have since become obsessed with Anya Taylor-Joy after watching Last Night in Soho, so I definitely will be watching it. I know that it has a really beautiful aesthetic and witchy vibe. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to actually getting around to it. Terrible, I've got so many to watch. Next we have World War Z, another one I've not watched yet, but this was a steal at £1. I've said already, I do love zombie movies. I keep meaning to read the book of this. I've heard that it's incredible, so I thought I would check out the movie. Brad Pitt in horror, who knew? Next up we have Wrong Turn, which is the newest one, the reboot that came out last year. I bought this when it was released. I think it was sort of springtime last year. I've only watched the original and the reboot of The Wrong Turn. It's not a franchise I'm particularly a huge fan of. It's not a franchise that I'm going to watch all the movies of, but I enjoyed this reboot. Gory as heck, but yeah, it was what it was. I think it went on a little bit longer than it needed to, but I enjoyed it. Next up we have Zombieland. This is another horror comedy that does it well, and again I got this secondhand for £1. Yeah, I watched this, found it very, very funny. It was a zombie movie done in a way I hadn't seen before. I liked how refreshing it was. Then we have Zombieland Double Tap. This I got for my birthday, I think 2 birthdays ago. Still not watched it. I know. I can't wait to watch this though, because I did love the original and I've heard that this is just as good. And to say, I mean, what's the gap between it? This first one came out in 2009, 10-year gap. A 10-year gap, and to have a strong sequel, that's incredible. Next up we have my collection of Universal Monsters. This has 8 movies in, I believe. We've got Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, Invisible Man, The Bride of Frankenstein, The Wolfman, Phantom of the Opera and Creature of the Black Lagoon. I love Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Creature of the Black Lagoon. Fantastic movies. I'd never seen a Wolfman movie. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. This is a lovely collection, all Blu Ray, and you get a nice little booklet that's full of art and information in it as well. I got this for my 31 Days of Halloween for 2020. So we're at the end of my horror movies, but I just wanted to tack on my only horror TV show that I have on physical media, and that is my huge and heavy Supernatural collection. This is seasons 1 to 12. I did originally start collecting these on DVD. A friend of mine recommended it. I watched the first season. I was hooked. I love the soundtrack. I love the car. I love how Dean just lives on burgers and never seems to put on any weight. But yeah, I love this series, especially the earlier seasons, because that's when they're horror. You know, you have horrific creatures of the night, you have vampires and ghosts and curses and things like that, and demons, and I really love that element. As it goes on, it becomes a bit more religious based and less horror, but you know, I'm this far in, I've got to keep going now. I do also have season 13, which I got bought for Christmas when it came out. Not up to 13 yet. I think I'm up to season 12 now, and then obviously I have 14 and 15 to go as well. It's a lot, guys. It's a lot of movies. I saw on the internet that if you watched all of these Supernatural seasons without a break, it would take you like 13 days or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, it's a long time. So yeah, I have seasons 1 to 13 of Supernatural. So there you have it, guys. That is my horror movie collection and a cheeky little TV show as well. I didn't expect it to take this long. If you have watched all of part 1 and all of part 2, I salute you. Thank you so much for sticking around. This was fun to do, but my voice is very sore and very hoarse now. Yeah, so my birthday's coming up soon. So potentially in a few months there will be a horror movie update / birthday haul, so look out for that. If you're not subscribed already, click that button so you don't miss it. But in the meantime, thank you as always for stopping by and slogging it through these long episodes. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye guys.